Okay, now we will be coming to the investing app. As you already know, it's for fundamentals. That part you know, and it shows you the news and for what currency those news will be. So now let's come to these things here, the actual forecast and previous, because there's a lot of confusion and a lot of misconception. So we'll start off with the previous, this one here. Let's just see the previous. The previous is the previous reading or the previous statistic released for that currency, and the news were for the German manufacturing PMI. So the previous reading was this one, 43.1. 43.1 was the previous reading. So then there will come the forecast or the consensus. This is what is forecasted by or forecast by the labor statistics or the people who will be releasing those news. This is what they forecast their reading to be. So this is what they forecast the news to, the reading to be. So usually when you get on the calendar, you will see the previous reading and the forecast for those particular news. So here they had a forecast of 43.1. So when the actual comes out, when the actual reading comes out, how it will impact the market. So remember, this is 90% of the time. We are speaking about 90% of the time. It's not always 100%. 90% of the time, this is how it will react. So if the actual reading comes out and you find that it's greater than the forecast, that means it's positive for this currency, this euro currency. That's positive or bullish for this euro currency. That's why right now you can see that it's colored in green. So if the actual comes and it's lower than the forecast, it will be negative for the currency and it will be in red. So we can also take the previous reading into consideration. We can take the previous reading into consideration when determining the impact, because you might find that right now, since as you can see, the forecast is equivalent to the previous. What they forecast is equivalent to the previous. So if the reading comes out greater than the if it comes out not only greater than the forecast but greater than both the forecast and the previous reading, that means it will be very bullish. I hope you get what I'm saying. The bullishness will have high impact. It will be highly impacted strength. But then if you find that the reading beat the forecast, but then was lower than the previous, that means that it might be slightly bullish. So if it beats the previous and the forecast, that's where you'll see action. That's where you'll see the bullish action. So let's try finding another news release which was negative. Okay, yeah, like this one. The previous was 51.7 year on USD ISM manufacturing PMI. The previous was 51.7, then they forecasted 52.0. So that means they were forecasting growth, because from 51.7 to 52.0 is a growth of 0.3, around 0.3. So the actual reading was lower than the forecast and also lower than the previous reading. So if you went to if you go to the market, you'll see that the bullish impact, because it was bullish for USD, it was weakness for USD. The weakness was very great. The bullish impact was 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 felt. So I hope you're still following what I'm saying. But then, had it been lower than the forecast, but then higher than the previous, let's say a reading of 51.9, as you can see, it's lower than this number, is lower than the forecast, but then it's greater than the previous reading. It would still be bullish, it would be in red. No, bearish. Sorry, okay, I was saying bullish the whole time. It's bearish. Weakness is bearish. So I apologize. I correct the bullish, bearish, weakness, red, bearish. So the bearish impact would be there, but then it wouldn't be great because the forecast was no, the actual was not. Yes, it was lower than the forecast, but then it was higher than the previous. So it would be bearish, but then at the same time, not that very much. So let's look at future news. Tomorrow we have, let's go to AUD retail sales. You find that they've given you a previous, the forecast, then the actual. Since the news hasn't occurred, the actual reading will be there at 3:30. As you can see, the news at 3:30 a.m. So the actual reading will be released at 3:30 a.m. So if the actual reading beats the forecast, let's say 0.4%, 0.5, 0.4 going upwards, you'll find that it will be very bullish or strong for the AUD currency, because 0.4% is greater than 0.3, which is the forecast, and also 0.1, which is the previous. But then if you find that 0.2, it will be bearish or weak for AUD because it's lower than the forecast, but then it might not be that much bearish or that much weak because it's still 0.2 is still higher than the previous. But then if you find that it's, let's say, 0.1 or 0 or negative something, it will be very bearish or it will be very weak for AUD, because not only is the actual reading lower than the forecast, but it's also lower than the previous. So this is how it is. A forecast is just what the department, it might be labor, or let me just say sector, is forecasting for that particular release. It doesn't mean that it will be like that. It's just their forecast. So if a reading is greater than the forecast, then it's usually bullish for the currency. If it's lower than the forecast, it's usually bearish for the currency. Even if you can tap on, sorry for that, even if you can tap, you'll see just that my network is slow. But then they will also tell you, if you read this message here, if you read this message here, they will tell you that a reading that is stronger than forecast is generally supportive or bullish for the AUD, while a weaker than forecast reading is generally negative, bearish for the AUD. And that's that. I hope I've cleared everything. Further questions, feel free to ask.